Hey everybody. Today I wanted to take the opportunity to teach you a little bit more about drawing a complex object and using a few tips and tricks to make it a little bit easier for you. So we're going to do a little drawing exercise at the mall, at the Darth Mall, that is. Dad joke. All right, so we've got our little file here. We have a template on our page, this drawing of this Darth Maul tattoo. And now we're going to use a variety of different drawing tools to work on it and try to recreate it. But looking at this artwork, analyzing it a little bit, you realize that we can get away with drawing a few parts and then duplicating and repeating those parts to finish it off. So if you were to sit here with your pen tool and just try to trace every single little piece one by one and recreate it from start to finish, all the way around each little shape in and out, it might take you a long time to try to do that, and it wouldn't be precise. It wouldn't be symmetrical. So you could look at a few parts here and draw them, repeat them, and save yourself a lot of time. So let's look at a few of those things just to get us going. So first things first, I would use either guides or a grid to help me kind of plot and figure out the exact dimension here. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and just drag over a guide into the middle of this Darth Maul drawing. And you can kind of see how the drawing itself isn't 100% symmetrical. And that's okay. When we start drawing this, we can kind of improve it and perfect it, which is what I intend to do. So I'm going to move that line until it just feels like it would be the center here. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and then lock my guides so that they don't move on me as I'm drawing. So let's just start with something like his nose. I'm going to dive in there and just look at his nose and see how we can work on this piece. Now, if I just draw one half, I could use my pen tool and kind of trace the outline. So I'm going to set up my pen tool so that I can look at a stroke line as I draw the edges. And I'm not going to worry about the right side. I'm just going to draw the left side. And typically when I'm doing these kinds of tracings, what I'll do is I'll pick like a red color as my stroke line. So I just kind of can see what I'm doing. So if I start here in the middle and I just click and then move my pen tool and my cursor up here to the top, looks like I can get kind of a smooth swoosh there on that edge. Now, if you remember from pen tool drawing, you have a couple options here. It looks like in this drawing, it has a little bit of a curve and then it sweeps back the other direction. So I don't really want to point right there. What I need to do is bend my anchor point or bend the handlebar. So what I do on my keyboard is I press Option or Alt if you're a PC user, and I bend that handlebar into that new direction. And I essentially want to turn it to the left because the curve is going to bulge out that direction. That gives me the curve that I need to get started. And then I'm going to cruise over here to this end and then tug against it to get that little smooth sweep there on the curve. Now, again, I'm here in another situation where I need to bend that handlebar. So Option, temporarily change my cursor to the anchor tool. Move that, kind of parallel to the start of that curve. And then I can kind of decide where I need to position my next anchor point. Now, this is where things get kind of difficult sometimes. It's like, how do you decide where to put your anchor point? Well, whenever you have a curve that's going back and forth like that, in this case, I probably want to hit the middle of the next largest curve. And then I can kind of tug. And maybe the middle of the next portion of that curve. Tug that way. And it's almost like these opposing handlebars in opposite directions can bend the line and give it kind of a smoother sweep. And then I am going to go ahead and stop here on my middle, guideline. Okay, so now I've drawn one half and I'm going to let go of this line by clicking Escape. All right, now I've got one half. So what I can do, switch to my anchor tool, click on the line, and I'm going to make a copy. Now, there's a couple different ways to use the reflect inside Illustrator. In this case, what I'm going to do is just click on the tool, select reflect here. Now, there is a little blue, you can kind of see it here, a little blue target that has appeared in the middle of that selected object. That's the axis line where that object is going to reflect. So I can actually move that little target down to this guideline in the middle of my page. Okay, that's going to tell me where I'm going to spin that object when I reflect it. Okay, so I'm going to double click the reflect tool. I like doing it this way instead of like dragging with the cursor. So what I'll do is I'll click preview here, and it's on the vertical reflect, and then I click copy, and so it made a copy. And you know what happened to me? I didn't reset the little target. Oh well, now that I'm here, I'm just going to grab my selection tool and slide it over. I click on that object and slide it over until it lines up with the edge of that middle or vertical guide. Okay, now you may realize that these anchor points here in the middle, they are not connected. Okay, so they are separate from one another. There's a really easy way to join them together without having to try to get in there real precise with the pen tool. So before I join them, what I'm going to do is just make sure that each anchor point is touching that middle line, just so that they're pretty dang close and right there next to each other. Now, what I'm looking for is what's called the join tool. And if you're looking on your toolbar, sometimes it's hidden under the shaper tool or the pencil tool. It's down here at the bottom, join tool. And all I have to do with that join tool is just scribble over those two anchor points, and it connects them. Extends the line and connects those anchor points. So now that is one shape. See how it's put together now? It's a much easier way of joining separate pieces, reflected pieces, than trying to get in there with a pen tool and make it exactly perfect. It just never seems to work right. So I can flip that, and now you see I have that more symmetrical, more perfected shape on his nose. All right, so I think you get the idea that you would do that with other pieces that need to have a reflection, like his chin, a couple other things like that. Now, when I look at something a little more complicated, like say this middle shape looks kind of like a horn here in the top in this middle line, and then these kind of little diamonds and so on. I actually want those to be more perfect shapes. Right now, they're a little irregular and you can see they're imperfect. I would rather draw these as separate pieces and then merge them. And using separate pieces, I can control each individual object and make it what I want it to be. So for example, I think I would just draw here a line, or I mean a rectangle actually, to make the width of that center line, let's say, of the bridge of the nose. Right? So that way, I create that little piece, I try to get it centered on that middle line, which I did there. And then what I would do is draw a square, and then using my selection tool, I could rotate that square, and while I rotate, I'm going to hold shift. And when I hold shift, it rotates the square exactly 45 degrees. So now it's a diamond. And I can bring that over and kind of line it up in the middle. It's not quite big enough, so I can scale it up. Here's another little trick. If you want an object to scale from the center, as opposed to being dragged to the left or to the right, what you do is you press Option and Shift on your keyboard, or Alt and Shift on your keyboard while you drag. So I'm going to click and drag, and I'm holding Option and Shift, and you can see how it's adjusting from the middle of the object. There we go. Now quickly I can make a duplicate by just dragging that object, holding Option and Shift and dragging, and it's going to make a duplicate. And I think I'll scale that one up just a little bit so it's a little bit bigger on the edge of his nose. And then same thing here on this piece. Go ahead and just draw a little mini rectangle and line it up there. Now let's say, for example, all right, let's say this object was a little bit off, this square was a little bit off, and this other one was a little bit off. And, I was just trying to eyeball them, but they weren't exactly just right. Well, I can also grab each of them, assuming that my middle line is centered, and I can use the alignment function. I can use the horizontal alignment up at the top where it will line up each object along its middle. And that real quick will make sure that they're all lined up perfectly where I want them to be and lined up to my horizontal, I keep saying horizontal, my vertical line, my vertical guide, as opposed to the drawing underneath. All right. So now you can kind of see here where that piece is starting to come together. And let's kind of finish it off by doing the top shape here. Again, for this one, all I have to do, it's a fairly simple shape actually. I'm going to start with a point up at the top. I'm not going to create a curve right there because it looks like it comes to a point. Therefore, my curve is going to be out here on the edge of the shape. So I'll let that go. And then come down here to the guide and click. And now you can see that I've got that half, and I'm going to click Escape and I'll let go of my line. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here because it looked to me like, yeah, that anchor point didn't get quite on the guide. So I'm going to drag that over, get it lined up. Okay, that's good. Now this time I'm going to use Reflect. And I'm going to go ahead and double click the tool so it brings up the dialog box. I want it to reflect exactly on the vertical line. I'm going to say copy instead of OK because copy makes a copy. And then I just slide that puppy over. Let it kind of line up with that middle line. Good deal. And you can see how far off this side of the drawing is. And again, we're trying to make this better, so it doesn't really matter. And I just need to zoom in here and make sure that I use my join tool to kind of go over that, get those joined. And then kind of slide up here. Now I don't see the end of this point. So I'm going to temporarily grab this middle line and I'm going to hide it so that I can join the piece that's underneath. So I'm going to go Object, Hide Selection. Okay, now you see those two pieces are revealed, so I can grab my join tool, scribble over the point where they are touching in the middle. Boom, connected. Now I'm going to go back to Object and I'm going to do Show All. All right, there we go. So now that middle piece is together, or at least it's drawn. It's not joined, it's not merged, but I could do that next. Now, probably the simplest thing to do here would be to select all of those pieces and then use a Pathfinder adjustment. So the Pathfinder adjustment I would use is Unite. So that would join them all. They're the same color. It would connect them into one large piece and one large shape. There we go. Now, I think you get the idea. The goal, I think, is to draw certain pieces. So now if I just drew like this left-hand side, I could then copy and duplicate it for the right-hand side. Or for the piece on his chin, again, I could draw one half, do the join method, and get it together. So that's a way that you can take your drawings and make them look a little more precise, a little more symmetrical. So your original doesn't have to be perfect, but by using shapes, the pen tool, doing connections using the Pathfinder, using Reflect, you can then create your full image. All right, so hopefully that gives you a few tips so that you can speed up your process and cut time as you draw. All right, see you next time.